The Wildcats ranked 31st nationally over the last 2 weeks, according to Bart Torvik. Now, nobody's throwing a parade for being 31st nationally. We understand that. But considering where this team has been this year and where it felt like the season was going after the Houston game when they lost by 30, that's pretty nice. And that makes you feel like, okay, with the goal being don't crater the program for multiple years with what's happening this year, that's a really nice step in the right direction.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Three Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined by Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, talking about the Wildcat victory today. How about that? K-State beats West Virginia 73-60, snaps a 6-game losing streak on Saturday, and a pretty nice sports weekend, man. K-State won. That went right into a thrilling finish between Kansas and Houston, where the Jayhawks lost in unprecedented fashion, and then the Chiefs won to go back to the Super Bowl and cement the greatest 7-year stretch in NFL history. I would say all that calls for a drink from our friends at Holiday Distillery. You can get Ben Holiday bottled in Mon Bourbon or 360 vodka from them and stock up. Your Super Bowl party coming up. Whether you're rooting for the Chiefs or not, whether you think it's rigged or not, whether you think it's WWE, you can still drink if you're watching professional wrestling, people. And when Patrick Mahomes hoists another trophy, make sure and cheers him with a glass of Ben Holiday bottled in Mon Bourbon. Welcome in, everybody. How are we feeling after that sports weekend? DY, your Buckeyes won a national championship last week, too. I mean, come on, man.
I was going to say, I'm not the biggest Chiefs fan. I passively root for them because I like you guys, but that's about it.
Do you really passively root for them, DY? Or do you find...
Yeah, because my closest friends here are all Chiefs fans. But I will say there is a subset of Chiefs fans that really irk me because they don't just embrace a dynasty. They lose their minds during the season and pretend like it's not going to end in a Super Bowl anyways.
Yeah.
Well, I always get very annoyed with them, and I'm very spoiled.
But yes, very spoiled. I think that's what I get annoyed with, the spoiled Chiefs fans, because last year was like, we're losing too many games because they went 11-6 during the season. I was like, you're still going to win a Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl. This year it's like, we went 15-2, but we're not winning by enough. You're still going to go to the Super Bowl. What happens? They're still going to go to the Super Bowl. It's either they're losing too many games, which 6 too many. Come on, you're spoiled. Or you're not winning by enough. Come on, you're 15-2. Yeah, that's really spoiled. And you're going to your 4th straight Super Bowl in 5 in the last 6 years.
Whoops. I got DY on a little soapbox there. My bad. Yeah, that was a nice sports weekend. I was at Brody's basketball game at the time. K-State tipped off. K-State tipped off at 5. Brody's basketball game Saturday was at 5. And, I checked the score maybe 15 minutes in, saw K-State was up 19-2. It was like, wow. Saw you guys' text rolling in, and then checked again, saw it was 42-18 at halftime, and then got home to watch around the last 13, 14 minutes of the game. Brody's team won by 2 in a thrilling fashion. It was an exhilarating game as well. Then come home and get to watch bonus basketball with KU Houston. Tremendous game as well. So that was great. And then obviously the Chiefs. So yeah, pretty good sports weekend.
Wow. What was how did Brody play?
Pretty solid. I mean, very tall team that they played, a lot of size and length, and that they weren't really used to. They improved to 3-0 on the season. They've got a big game coming up in 2 weeks. I'm going to try to get some local media to the game, maybe a 3 Ma Live episode courtside, where they'll be playing a couple of unbeatens will be playing in the league. But Brody almost got a tech, so not. I had to really get on him. So yelled out.
Is he a good perimeter defender? Because I know a team that might be able to use that.
Well, he didn't get low enough in his stance, got blown by a couple times, but in general, pretty good defender, pretty good ball handler. Biggest problem is, he yelled at in a tied game late in the game. A kid fell to the floor that he was guarding, and Brody turned to the ref. The ref called a foul, and Brody just threw his arms out and he goes, "He flopped," and yelled it out to where the whole gym heard. So, and the ref goes, "Shh." So I was like, man, Brody, you got to stop that. Not my kid. I don't do that. So, not at that age.
Yeah, you know that whole nature versus nurture thing. I mean, clearly that's just nature. That has nothing to do with nurture. That's just
The problem is now Cole's got to tame himself down when he's watching Kansas State games because he knows that Brady's going to take it to the actual court.
Yeah, we talk about it.
Brody,
yeah, we talk about it all the time. Not to talk to officials, and you let the coach do that, but especially at that age now. And so I have toned it down this year. There hasn't been a lot to get upset about with officiating, guys. Usually they're not playing much of a role in K-State winning or losing.
Cole, did you know that Vanessa put up on her Instagram story during the basketball game? It was one of your daughters, and it just said not interested in basketball. So it looked like, the whole family wasn't really very committed. You weren't even watching the game on Saturday. I mean, no, I don't know why we're sitting here talking about it on a podcast. The Manbeck family was just not dialed in on Saturday.
John, it drives me crazy. We go to Brody's basketball games, and I tell the girls, we're going to focus. You're going to learn the game. You're going to watch the game. And Vanessa packs up a bag full of toys, and they just sit there and play with dolls and stuff the whole game. So not very supportive. Not learning the game. Not my ideal, but they leave me alone so I can watch. So that's the goal.
Okay. All right. Well, K-State did win 73-60, got up 19-2, as you guys mentioned, led by as many as 26. Now, West Virginia is it's a ranked win, right? I mean, the crazy thing about this is both Big 12 wins that you have are technically ranked wins. Cincinnati was ranked at the time. I don't think either of those teams will end the season in the top 25, but they are. I mean, West Virginia was having a really nice season until they had a disastrous week last week. 2 games ago, yeah, they beat Iowa State, but obviously last week lose at home to Arizona State and then get clubbed at K-State. So I don't, but take all that aside, it doesn't really matter. Like, this team was 1-6, right? And to be able to win a Big 12 game and win a Big 12 game by double digits and that kind of margin and just control the game and get out and just hit somebody in the face right away, the way that they did. We just haven't seen that kind of energy from the team and just being able to blitz somebody. I mean, almost all season. It's like thinking about this. Like, did they do that in a non-con game to anybody? Like, come out and just bury them by 20 right away? Like, I don't know that we've seen that the entire year.
Yeah, probably Mississippi Valley State. I mean, they scored 120 points that game.
Wait, that was fine. Bluff.
Yeah, I was like, Mississippi Valley State was they were favored by 38, and
that was when people were getting livid because K-State was fiddling through that game. Tear down.
You're right. There was one. Yes.
Okay, I was thinking of Pine Bluff, and they scored 120 then. So, maybe one. There might have been another, right? 2, 3. Did they ever do it in the Virgin Islands?
George Washington, they came out and threw a punch in the first half. I think they were up by 19 or so at halftime. And honestly, that was the game that I thought Doug McDaniel broke out and was feeling great about.
Yeah, that was
might be headed.
Yeah, to be honest, this past game, at least the first half, was probably the best we've seen Doug McDaniel. But the George Washington game was the other time where he looked that good, I thought.
Well, I mean, that's a starting point. Like, Doug McDaniel, when he plays well, the team looks good. I mean, I don't know that it's a whole lot more complicated than that. There are obviously other factors that can play into it. I mean, you got a really nice game from C.J. Jones and Max Jones, very similar to what happened against Cincinnati. But, like, if Doug is on, 15 points, 6 assists, 5 of 13 from the floor, and playing with energy, this team is going to be pretty good. And that was definitely the case on Saturday.
Yeah, I think you guys can vouch. I believe I've said it on this show. I've definitely written about it a few times. But even before that West Virginia game, I was kind of buying in almost to what Jerome Tang was saying. But I think I said it without even knowing that he was saying it, that I thought this team, despite the losses to like a Kansas and a Baylor and coming up short against Texas Tech at home in a game that was clearly winnable, I thought there were signs in all 3 of those games that this thing was starting to head in the right direction. And I think it manifested itself almost in kind of an explosion, at least in the first half, against West Virginia. Now, the kicker will be, do they sustain this? Like, that's kind of been the issue all year. You have a good 5-minute stretch, a good 10-minute stretch, whatever it may be. but you don't sustain it for multiple games in a row, or you don't even sustain it for 35 minutes or 40 minutes. I'm still not sure they played a 40-minute game this year in which they have won. They probably haven't. So I think that's probably needs to be the next step, but I think you got a good 30 or so. That's the thing. Like, this season's still probably going nowhere, obviously, but they just absolutely crushed West Virginia at home, and he still probably only got 75% good game from his team, right? I don't think he got more than 30 minutes of elite basketball from his team. So there's still actually a lot where this team can take, but unfortunately, it's kind of got to be a crescendo momentum in a path towards next season rather than this season, because you've already dug the hole. But dug the hole's not the pun I was hoping to make there, but maybe it applies. I think now's the question. I think Cole and I talked about it on the last show, and I feel my confidence meter, percentage meter that we both said is probably even higher after the West Virginia game, is that does your future now include Doug McDaniel? And I think it probably does, at least assuming it continues down this trajectory.
I need to there's a lot of basketball left to be played. Let's
There is, but like that's what you have to. I think that's the storyline the rest of the season, because he's keeps trumpeting Coach Tang, and probably rightfully so. I get it. This Houston model, and that requires keeping 6 or 7 guys. And I don't think I can find 6 or 7 guys without Doug.
Look, I'll say this, when I watched Doug over the last few games, he does look engaged. He's playing over 30 minutes a game the last few, and, he looks like he's giving good effort, and that the focus is there. There are still lapses, and there are things you definitely want to see him to be significantly better at. But, and to John's point, I mean, this could completely unravel still and change based off past history. But as of now, there probably is a substantially larger chance that Doug McDaniel returns if he wants, in case they want him back, than what there probably was 3 weeks ago. I mean, DY and I did a Patreon pod, just last week, and we were asked about Doug and players coming back, and I went from saying probably like 5% chance that he's back to, closer to 50 at this point, and being a coin flip, and DY might be even higher. And, the 104.7 offensive rating by Doug against West Virginia, that is his highest in his last 11 games. His prior 10 games, he was under 100 for an offensive rating. And he had his 29.2 usage rate against West Virginia, which was his highest in Big 12 play as well. And so some steps are being taken. Now, consistency has been a problem in the past, so we'll see if that carries over. But yeah, it's going to take more than just this for me to be bought in on Doug moving forward and into the future, and you trusting him with the keys to the car to be the point guard at Kansas State next season. But you're feeling like it's tracking much better than it was before.
I think that's the takeaway now, though, from that game, is that now you're tracking towards maybe a 25-26 team that includes Doug McDaniel. And obviously that doesn't preclude yourself from going and getting other guards to put them next to. But if you're the right path, I mean, the most successful, best case scenario for Kansas State is that they do get Doug McDaniel right, and they do get the good Doug McDaniel for good. And that's what you can kind of create. Basically what the intention of this year was, basically gets fast forwarded or gets pushed forward to next season. That's how I see it. And I actually think it's almost extra impressive that Jerome Tang's getting this sudden improvement, because I don't think it's a one-game thing for Doug. I think it's been 3 or 4 that you're getting it during some of the worst points of the year to essentially have your best buy-in at this point of the season, especially after the way they lost to Oklahoma State and Houston. I do think speaks well to how Jerome Tang is still connecting to this roster.
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point. So we're going to make this the top storyline, which we'll get to. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll go more big picture here with the top storyline, because I think you are right. And there was a great tweet from Kellis Robinette with a really interesting stat on that front about how K-State has been playing lately here. But Cole's got home field apparel on. He's got the pullover. DY, I can already see the buttons on that. I don't think that's really like a home field style shirt, so I assume that there's no alternate message behind the attire today.
No, unless this is the funeral of West Virginia, because they're done for the rest of the year probably.
Wow. You don't think they're making the tournament?
No, I don't.
They're going to get their best player
They're
back.
going to get DeVries back.
They'll make the tournament. They beat Iowa State. They beat KU already on the road. They beat Arizona on a neutral court.
Does Gonzaga mean anything anymore? I know
They beat Gonzaga too. Yeah, they've got a hell of a resume. They're going to get in unless they completely derail.
Whatever. DY's burying them, Cole.
Wow.
Argue with a wall. DY's burying them. Home field apparel, though, looks nice on you. Homefieldapparel.com is where you can get the best college gear around. 50-plus K-State designs there, 100-plus other schools that are out there. I'm sure there is black. Maybe there's like a black West Virginia shirt that you can get and celebrate West Virginia's funeral with DY. You can join there. 15% off your first order with promo code Fremont24. That's promo code Fremont24 for 15% off your first order. And we are back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
So it's not like this has been perfect. And I know, the Baylor game looked like this team played a lot better, but we still had a lot of frustration, particularly just with how the offense looks in terms of movement and what they're doing consistently. But hey, Bart Torvik, for all the stat nerds out there, you can't really argue with what Torvik has to say. And according to Kellis Robinette, the Wildcats ranked 31st nationally over the last 2 weeks, according to Bart Torvik. Now, nobody's throwing a parade for being 31st nationally. We understand that. But considering where this team has been this year and where it felt like the season was going after the Houston game when they lost by 30, that's pretty nice. And that makes you feel like, okay, with the goal being don't crater the program for multiple years with what's happening this year, that's a really nice step in the right direction. And for all the consternation about Jerome Tang and, what are we going to do? And the, just rage-fueled stuff that happens on Twitter all the time with everybody demanding, firings and all this stuff right now. Like, you got to admit, if this continues, it's pretty impressive to keep a group of hired guns engaged enough to turn it around and play like, a borderline tournament team over the last couple of weeks at least. And if they continue that through the rest of the season, you got to give them a lot of credit. You really do. And it would make me feel so much more optimistic about what's going to happen next year and trying to pull off the Missouri. I think that's kind of your blueprint right now. You want to be Mizzou.
If you're still so upset that you just want to listen and read about people just burying Kansas State basketball because it still angers you so much that they started so bad, that they dug a hole so big that they probably won't make the NCAA tournament, or that they won't make the NCAA tournament, then this is probably not the podcast for you, because we're not just going to sit and bang it over the head about how angry and upset we are because they played so poorly at the beginning of the season or at the middle of the season or wherever it may be. Yes, the start was terrible and everything about that, but at the same time, we're going to continue to assess them on what they currently are and not what they did for 2.5 months, which was pretty poor basketball that really buried them and made the NCAA tournament not possible. So that was an unfortunate start. But if you just want us to bang our head over and just be angry about that part of the season over and over the rest of the year, like I said, this is probably not the podcast for you, because at the end of the day, they are making strides. A lot of the metrics say that, and if you just watch them with the naked eye, it's very clear, to be quite honest. So I like what I'm seeing from this team in the last couple of weeks. Ball bounces the right way here or there. They probably beat Texas Tech at home as well. So they are definitely better at home right now than away as well. Baylor game, you were up 12, but you let that one kind of get away from you pretty easily. So at the end of the day, I'm going to kind of assess them for what they currently are. And I think it is pretty impressive, as I said, a few minutes ago, that Jerome Tang is basically able to get this kind of product out of them after the worst basketball of the year, to get a team that didn't seem pretty interested right now based on everything that's happened, at least tells me he's starting to get through to a good chunk of these guys. And maybe now we can anticipate a good chunk of them returning and kind of building that core or set of players to maybe make a good run next season.
Hey, Cole, before you go, because I messed up and forgot the Alenco read there. It's alencohome.com, ALENCO home.com. They bring you the top storyline every week. My apologies to Alenco. Don't be like me. Make sure you call them and hit them up at alencohome.com for any home improvement need that you have. So, Cole, that means you get to be the social minister. No pressure, buddy. You talking about the big picture and K-State playing like a borderline tournament team the last couple of weeks, according to Bart Torvik. This one's all you. So how you feeling about this?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Kellis for pointing this out. Number 31 team in the country over the last 2 weeks. So from January 12th to January 27th now, they're 31st in the country in terms of how they're playing. They're 23rd in adjusted offensive efficiency, 72nd in adjusted defensive efficiency over that time. And if you go back before that, guys, and look at December 14th to January 11th, which starts with the St. John's game on the road and ends with the Houston game in Manhattan when they got beat by 30, K-State ranked as 171st in the country during that time frame, 31st in the country over these last 2 weeks. This is a small sample size still relatively in the grand scheme of things, but it definitely shows signs of improvement. And as John and DY has just said and outlined, it is substantial and meaningful that Jerome Tang has kept this thing from completely derailing. We thought this team looked like a team that might quit, and it would have been easy to do so. I feel they lost by 30 to Houston, and instead they have fought. I mean, they have been in every game. Kellis had pointed out they've covered the spread in the last 4 games. You could make a genuine argument that they should have beaten Texas Tech, and they should have won on the road at Baylor. And look, this is a what-if scenario that sounds silly to even go down this road at this point, but there were a lot of opportunities that if they got over the hump and closed, we could be talking about this team in a different light. You think about the Drake game when they were up by 3 points with under a couple minutes left. You think about Texas Tech, a game that they should have won at home. Texas Tech is 11th in the net. You think about Baylor on the road, up 12 in the second half. And you think about TCU on the road where you're up 6 with under 3 minutes left in the game. Like, you're not going to win all 4 of those games, in all likelihood. But if you had, you'd be talking about a team that's 12-7 and potentially on the right side of the NCAA tournament bubble right now. Like, they're obviously not, and that is a fault of everybody not being able to close games. Execution, they have to be far better at closing games when they're on the road, when they're winning. They got to snap this road losing streak, etc. But it's signs of improvement, and at this point, guys, that's all we can ask for, because there's not a lot when it comes to the NCAA tournament picture at this point or anything like that, postseason play. It's about building a culture and establishing a foundation for the future for next season.
That's exactly right. I think without really being any postseason implications because of how poorly you played early, what you can ask for is to play hard, to care, to improve, and to build on a potential set of players that can carry you next season. And if we're all going to be hooked up to a lie detector test, we would say that's exactly what's happened in the last 2 weeks.
Yes, and beyond that too, how about just like being able to enjoy fun basketball games? Like, that was the other thing I thought, like on Saturdays, Bramlage sounded pretty good. It's not like on full tilt like it had been the last couple of years for those Saturday home games, but like you get a Saturday Big 12 home game, like the fans still generally are showing up and making it just fun to go out and watch a basketball game. Like, I get it. It sucks. We all have postseason expectations and want that to happen, and that's out the window. But that doesn't mean you can't still enjoy games and this team can't still give you some fun moments the rest of the year. I mean, you got a lot of basketball left to be played. So as simple as that is, that was one of my takeaways from watching the game, was just like, hey, like, this is nice. How, early in the season, like, that's why I was panicking so much in the non-con. It was just like painstaking to watch. It was not fun. You could see all these problems and you're just like in your head, like, stressed out about where this is going. Like you mentioned, the Mississippi Valley State game earlier this year. I was like watching that game, like, that's when we were still trying to get Cole on board. Like, Cole, this is not good. Like this. And so to be able to just be like, okay, like, they're playing hard. It's a fun game. They're doing well against a team with a pulse that probably, in my opinion, will make the tournament. That's fun. Like, just enjoy that for what it is.
There were times in that stretch of basketball that basically eliminated them from being able to go to an NCAA tournament that they didn't have all 5 guys running down the floor. Hell, they didn't even have 3 or 4 in most times, right? There were times where guys were just not engaged with the coaching staff. The body language was poor. They're not getting on the floor. They're not hustling for anything. They're not rebounding. There's clear lack of energy. It was clear that the other team had more intensity, more energy, more spirit, more competitiveness, more effort. And it was like game after game. And that really buried this team. But you're not seeing that anymore. I wrote in some of my daily thoughts yesterday that there were some blinking like red signs in a good way, like about Doug McDaniel, for example, things that you would never see from him earlier in the season when Jerome Tang calls him over, and you don't get this guy like rolling his eyes anymore. You don't get this guy looking somewhere else anymore, or looking like he had to be bothered to jog 15 feet to talk to his head coach. And we sprints over to his head coach, and the eye contact is perfect, and the body language is great. And then a minute later, he's basically diving into the scoreboard or scores table for a loose ball. Just things you would never see from Doug McDaniel. I even posted a picture, and I think it was from Kansas State Athletic Social Team, of a picture of Doug McDaniel. It wasn't a shot he made. It was a shot that Max Jones made. It was he's got a still shot. Max Jones had just made a 3-pointer, I think, from the top of the key. And the guy most excited was Doug McDaniel. Again, another thing that I don't think you would see from that kid a month ago. Now being excited for his teammates. He's kind of taken that unselfish path and started to bust his ass. And again, does that continue on to Wednesday? I don't know. Like you never know with this team, but it's happened for about 3 or 4 straight games, and I think it's the best sign we've seen all year.
Look, everything has to carry over. I mean, we're talking about things in a positive light right now. You got Oklahoma State and Bramlage on Wednesday night. You need to come out and play really well. Oklahoma State.
You're in.
Yeah, you got to win, but you got.
Yeah, you lose that, then all the good things from that we're talking about now from Saturday mean nothing.
Yeah, Oklahoma State was competitive on the road at Texas Tech on Sunday. They played yesterday, and they hung in there for the most part, but it's a game that you have to win in Bramlage. Bart Torvik has K-State favored by 8 points right now, projects an outcome of 77-69, because then you go to Iowa State on Saturday, and boy, that'll not probably be fun. K-State's first return trip there since last year's incident. But then, you got Arizona State on the road. And I mean, Arizona State had Iowa State on the ropes on Saturday, up 1 or 2 in the last 5-6 minutes. Iowa State had a ton of fans there. It was like,
I will say, like, I kind of wrote about this before too. A lot of these teams, even at the bottom, have had good moments where they put a good team on the ropes. But I will say more than just about any of the years, like last 5 years that I can remember, the bottom of the Big 12, this is why I say there's a chance that Kansas State's not going to walk away with a completely awful record if they continue to improve, because there is a lot more beatable teams this year than there typically is in the Big 12. It's as simple as that. Like, they just beat West Virginia, of course. They got Oklahoma State coming up. But like Kansas State, I get that they haven't won a road game in a while. It's a long time, so they got to do that. But I think you can beat teams like Utah, TCU, Cincinnati, Arizona State, Colorado, maybe even BYU and UCF, even though UCF looks okay now. There's just a lot more average to below average teams in the Big 12 this year than there has been in the past.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to Arizona State. You could potentially win that game. Utah on the road is a winnable game. You got Arizona State at home. You got Colorado at home, very winnable game. They haven't won a Big 12 game yet. Cincinnati on the road looks far more winnable than it probably did after the non-con. They are really scuffling. So you go down the list, and then you got home games, Arizona at home. They're playing really well right now, so that's going to be a really tough spot, especially on the heels of the KU game. But that KU game in Manhattan, just, 12 days away now? That'll be a fascinating game, given how K-State played the Jayhawks in Lawrence. And, we'll see where that K-State team is by then and the mindset. They'll be fired up to play that game. And I've seen far worse K-State teams than this, or maybe not far worse, but I've seen worse K-State teams than this win games against KU and Bramlage Coliseum. I think about that Nigel Johnson game where he scored 20+ in the 2015 season for Kansas State. So that'll be an interesting matchup as well.
There's always that one Big 12 team that Fran Fraschilla and like other national outlets, like by the middle of the season and then the rest of the year says they're not going to make the tournament, but that's the one team you don't want to play because they're a freaking pain in the ass and they're beating teams now. K-State, your goal should be to be that team.
Well, whoever it was that gave us the Kansas football comparison the other day, which, like, I still would stand by what we said, that I don't think this team is like on that level, but that would be your goal, is to like get to that point. I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about, is how Kansas football wound up by the end of the year. So I'm with you. Yeah, the Big 12. I mean, the Big 12 as a whole, like, I know I'm supposed to be Big 12 guy here, but yeah, you maybe whisper it, like, it's not all that great this year. And the SEC is awesome. So
the metrics have the Big 12, like, again, I know your Big 12 guys will whisper it, but the third best league right now, even behind the Big 10.
Yeah. It's hard to argue, and it's tough. I mean, we're talking about Kansas, like,
them being down hurts.
When Kansas is down, yeah, that definitely does hurt. So thanks, Jay.
Didn't hurt me. Yeah.
Yeah. Me neither. Just being honest here, people. We're being honest today. Cole, speaking of being honest, we didn't get to this. If there is ever a sign that this team is playing with more effort, okay?
Oh, God.
Ugana Onyenso had 4 rebounds in 10 minutes. He had 4 rebounds in 10 minutes.
He had a putback and a 3-point play off an offensive rebound, too.
I thought you were actually going somewhere else with that, based off our group text on Saturday. I mean, I missed most of the first half, but Onyenso certainly seemed encouraging, the way you guys were texting and what he did.
Since you missed the first half, you missed his minutes, right?
Yeah. So why didn't he play? Why didn't he play in the second?
I think it's because David Gasson had the offensive matchup, had a really good second half, didn't play a whole lot of the first half because he was in foul trouble, and he's the better defender. So, and you're not going to play the two together. So David Gasson plays like the entire second half.
But what was the tackle? He had 8 rebounds in 69 minutes before that.
Yeah. So he had 3 in 10.
16 half of those in 10.
4 and 10. We're moving in the right direction, man. Let's go.
Do you think we had? He had 2 blocks. He had 2 blocks in his previous 69 minutes as well. Did we have an impact? Did we need to call Ugo out? I mean, I'm not saying.
I mean, it was.
Is he a Greenlaw listener?
I'm gonna guess probably not. But
we did have a download in Nigeria earlier this year, guys, on the chartable list. So did the message get through? I don't know.
Well, let's hope somebody send it to him. We appreciate your efforts, Ugo, on Saturday. I would also point out this. Now, this was not like the best Coleman Hawkins game of the year by any stretch of the imagination. And there have been times, I know I've seen people point out, we called out one instance where he didn't really run after a loose ball very hard the other night. But like, in terms of the team not falling apart, Coleman Hawkins, I think, does a pretty good job of like setting a tone of like being professional about it, right? Like if there was anybody, I mean, everybody knows he's making the most money of anybody on the team. If there were anybody who could just totally check out and be like, man, I don't care about this, whatever, I'm out, and just set this tone for the team of like, we're collecting our paychecks. I've made the tournament all 4 years, had all this success. I'm not doing it this year, whatever. I do appreciate that he still goes out and gives you a professional effort every single night, which, is what it is right now in college basketball, and is saying the right things too. I mean, I thought his comment after the KU game was really impressive when he was asked about the situation that he's in. So I think that helps. Like, I just, he takes so much crap and has taken so much crap throughout the year that I do think that is something that is worthy of pointing out here.
I think that's a fair assessment of him as a whole. Now, like you said, wasn't his best performance, 3 of 11 from the field. Kansas State misses 7 of their 22 free throws, and he missed 5 of them. So he was 5 of 10 from the line, continues to struggle there. I would go a step further, what you said about Coleman Hawkins. I know they don't have the same body of work or past history as him or make the same amount of money as him, most likely. But I think it's your 3 seniors, right? It's a shame that you're going to lose those 3 because they probably conducted themselves the best. Like they've been the grown-ass adults in the room, right? David Gasson, Coleman Hawkins, and Max Jones.
Which, to that point, EY, that is, like, we talk about retention and everything, and I guess the one concern is you're an 8-11 team, and you're arguably going to lose your 3 best players from this roster, or 3 of the 4, maybe. I mean, I think Max Jones is one of your top 4 players.
I would say your 3 toughest and mature and professional.
Yeah. David Gasson, top 40 offensive rating in all of college basketball right now among guys with a 15 usage rating or higher. Coleman Hawkins facilitates your offense, and then Max Jones plays with a relentless effort, good leader type guy, and does a lot of nice things when he's out there on the court. He's effective. And so those three guys are out of eligibility unless we can, get Max or someone to sue the NCAA and some extra year.
Like Cole, at this point, I don't think it's fair to say that. There's a new lawsuit every other day. Diego Pavia will probably have all three of those guys playing for the Cats next year.
Yeah, well, I would definitely. Well, yeah,
because he gets crap for it too, like often, and probably understandably so. I'm just going to point out David Gasson, best game from the free throw line in the Kansas State uniform as well, 4-4.
Well, I appreciate that because this team sucks at the line. Like they're not.
No, they would if it wasn't for, like, I hate to say it, but it wasn't for Coleman Hawkins 5 of 10. They look really damn good at the line yesterday or Saturday.
What was also interesting to me from Saturday, guys, CJ Jones plays 28 minutes, and that ties for a season high for CJ Jones. And he'd only played, the previous 4 games, 10 minutes, 13, 9, 16. It looked like his minutes were starting to get slashed, and we were wondering what's CJ Jones' future. Now, one game doesn't change that, but I would say CJ Jones had maybe his best game in a K-State uniform, or maybe his second best game.
At least out of the games that have been consequential, I think you could say best, or like the meaningful games, like a league game, that was his best. And credit to the staff. I mean, I've kind of been beating the drum of play David Castillo. Who cares? Like, what happens? Like, let him develop and do all of this. But CJ Jones was clearly the better option of the two on this particular day. And there's no reason to disrupt the first great amount of success that you've had and what feels like a long time. You're up 19-2, and David Castillo's 7 minutes just aren't great. Then in this particular instance, the best decision is to stick with CJ. But what I would say is I wouldn't completely abandon David Castillo, and I don't think they will, but also pour into CJ Jones only as much as he's willing to pour into you.
Yeah. Specific to Saturday game, guys, one thing I did like, first of all, 47.3% field goal percentage by K-State. That's their second highest in Big 12 play. They went 20 of 38 on twos. They only attempted 17 threes. That was the second fewest on the season. That was something I liked seeing from K-State. They went inside more, didn't settle for as many threes. 1.33 points per possession in the first half. That was, and 1.1 points per possession by K-State overall in the game. That was the fourth highest allowed by West Virginia on the season. They're top 20 in the country in Ken Palm defensive rating. West Virginia is. K-State's now averaging 1.11 points per possession in the past 3 games. The prior 4, they were averaging under 0.93 points per possession. So a substantial jump there. And then defensively, obviously, K-State was really good against West Virginia, which has been a struggle for the Wildcats of late. West Virginia, 39.7% effective field goal percentage, a season worst by a K-State opponent, second worst by West Virginia this season. They go 4-21 from 3, 19% from beyond the arc, the second worst by a K-State opponent this season, and they averaged just under 0.91 points per possession. That's the lowest points per possession K-State's held a team to since the Longwood game on November 25th, and the second lowest on the season for West Virginia. They only had 0.57 points per possession in the first half, where they were 32% from 2, 10% from 3. K-State's previous 5 games, they allowed nearly 1.2 points per possession, and a substantial jump against Mountaineers. Now, was this just a one-game outlier? To be determined, but nice to see a better improved defensive effort on Saturday.
It certainly could be. They got with 42 points in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I trust the offensive improvement more than I do the
West Virginia had 42 points in the second half.
Yeah. But I mean, they're good. Javon Small is awesome.
Yeah.
God, he is awesome.
That's the guy that.
What was the competition for him in the portal, man?
Well, that's what I was going to say, John. Like, you look at some of these guys like Javon Small, they didn't feel like they were, Nick says KU wanted him, so maybe the comments will say looks better.
That makes me feel better because, I felt like this is like the type of guy like he could have really gone after.
I would guess he was more affordable than some of the options chased, though, for sure. So, I don't know. He averaged over 15 a game at West Virginia or at Oklahoma State last year before he came in from East Carolina, I believe, the year prior. But yeah, a guy like that, like if you could go find a guy like that, Nick says he even visited KU. So
Okay. All right. Well, I stand corrected on that. I thought that was a little more attainable. Yeah.
One of our guys on the Discord, also during the offseason, he wanted him to target Milo Zuzan, who's now the Houston point guard. And that was before we knew Houston was in on him.
Well, he looks good.
Oklahoma transfer. Now it helps going into Kelvin Sampson's system, but
Everyone wanted him, though.
really? I mean, he wasn't that, like his numbers weren't all that over the top.
But but everyone knew. Like, if you watched an Oklahoma game last year, you knew he was going to be the best guard on that team eventually.
Yeah.
Well,
Cole,
we could go down the. I mean, Terrace Reed, is having a nice season at UConn, and going back to like we've talked about Tamar Bates and Mark. Bates.
Yeah, no, I just like as I look ahead, like maybe there's some guys like that don't have the flashiest numbers. Javon Small had pretty good numbers, but like Uzan, other guys like that like I kind of rolled my eyes at when I was told like Uzan. I was like, no, they can do better. No, maybe you need a couple guys like that. So, and this next off season.
Oh, I think we've learned our lesson on the portal. Like it's if you're not talking about the top guys, and even then, I mean, I'm pretty sure they had a parade down Mass Street when Hunter Dickinson signed a couple of years ago, being the number one guy in the portal. And I don't ask Kansas fans about how it's gone building the team around him the last couple of years relative to their expectations. I think Nick saying it's more about fit. That's so true. Like we talked about it in football, right? Calming everyone down in the football portal. If you're not taking the tip top upper crust, kind of a crapshoot, depends on fit. And what is the biggest thing about this team we've been screaming about all year? Like guys that have not always played really hard, have not been the guys from like a culture standpoint that you really wanted. Like that's got to be more the focus this year, obviously. And I think it will be. Like I think it will be. I know that this is a conversation that will continue as we get deeper into the year, but I feel like there will be some level of humility in all of this, and the strategy and everything will change. I'm pretty optimistic about that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
well, it's going to be. That's part of it, but I think a bigger part is like, don't put yourself in a spot where you got to go out and get 10 guys. Like, because I think that's a cumbersome task. And obviously, it kind of hurts with continuity and chemistry on the court. And that's why I went. And I know people kind of wrestle with the idea of this now because of everything that we have seen up to this point and it being kind of all over the board. But that's why I bring up the possibility of a return of Doug McDaniel and whether that at the end of the day is better than not. Because to be honest, you have to replace at least 4 already because you had 3 seniors leaving and the chore is already out the door. I guess, but Tyreek Smith comes in, so it's 3 right now. I wouldn't want more than another 2 or 3 to leave.
Yeah. And I would also like, as I'm thinking about guys like you chase, right? I mean, look at like Elijah Hawkins, point guard for Texas Tech. Not the flashiest numbers, not some big parade thrown for when Tech landed him this offseason. A guy that averaged under 10 points per game at Minnesota last year, but 7.5 assists at Minnesota last year, averaging top 20 in assists this year in college basketball at 6.1 assists. A nice leader for them, 8.7 points. Like there are guys out there that aren't going to wow you with the numbers as we look ahead to this next offseason that, Darion Williams at Texas Tech. Look at what Curtis Jones, Keyshawn Gilbert at Iowa State, not the flashiest guys that they brought in. I mean, Curtis Jones had good numbers at Buffalo, but I mean, those guards I'm jealous of in Ames. So there's a lot of good players out there. You got to identify the right fit. And that's what K-State will have to do this next offseason. But yeah, from a retention standpoint, DY, the less guys that you have to fill, the better. So,
well, I mean, it's clear the best case scenario is Doug McDaniel continues to play hard and you keep him around and build. Like, I'm with you. It's just my initial response when DY brought that up was like, let's just, this nice 2 weeks. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. We might be jumping the gun here, but yeah.
No, I'm not jumping the gun and say it's a slam dunk. I'm saying that's what you have to have.
I would also just throw this out, Cole. I was thinking about this the other day. I got so crosswise and like aggregated among Texas Tech people. We got crosswise with Tech over the recruitment of Toussaint a couple of years ago, and really scoffed at Grant McCaslin. And boy, that he looks pretty good. I think Tech's pretty good.
Yeah, they don't do it really pretty. I would just say a lot of their wins kind of leave something for the imagination in terms of how it gets done. Like they looked pretty sloppy and looked like they had to barely escape by against Oklahoma State, right? It felt like they should have lost at Manhattan when they played K-State. They lost at home to UCF. They were on the ropes for a bit at Cincinnati. It's never really looked beautiful, but at the end of the day, they are positioned pretty well, and they do have that nice win against Arizona, of course, and nearly beat Iowa State at home. It just seems like nothing is easy, but they're also going to take care of business when they have to. They're a tough team to nail down, to be quite honest. I don't know what to think of them, but put it this way, I think they're 4-0 in the Big 12 on the road. So
yeah, they're tough, man, and they've got the third best. I saw they have the third best odds to.
I think it's because you win your first 4 Big 12 games on the road.
Yeah,
if you take care of your home games, you're at least 14-6. But they already lost at home to Iowa State. So.
They have Cole. I'm sorry, I'll let you go here. They have the third best Big 12 championship odds.
Yeah,
right
now. UCF actually they've been better on the road than at home. They lost to UCF at home.
You're good. They're 11th in KenPom in the country. And they're 12th offensively in offensive rating and 27th in defensive rating. And it's so interesting because Grant McCaslin's reputation at North Texas was slow the game down, low possession game, one of the lowest possession games, lowest pace teams in the country, defensive minded. And at Tech now, they've become a lights out 3-point shooting team, one of the best 3-point shooting teams in college basketball this year, and a really good offensive team. And so, he's built around a nice core. They've identified JT Toppin was a huge land in the portal. Darian Williams the year prior, a huge land in the portal. Hawkins, a really good point guard. McMillan, a tremendous 3-point shooter. They built a really nice roster in Lubbock. Now we say all this. Last year they got bounced still in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So they'll have to be better in postseason play this year. But yeah, they are a fun team to watch. So yeah, he's done a nice job there.
Yeah, I guess my point. I should not have scoffed at that. We were riding high. We were riding high at that point off of that first year of the Jerome Tang era. Listen, if you're honest with yourself as a fan, I know everyone's been hating on Tang all year, and we've been talking about, hey, you need to humble yourself. We all got humbled. We all got really humbled, and now it's just building yourself back up. We're gonna build ourselves back up, guys. It's okay.
The beginning of February will be big for Tech. They have a 3-game stretch with Houston, Baylor, and Arizona.
Well, they should have. I mean, they had Iowa State basically beaten in Lubbock. They should have won that game, and think about where the Big 12 race would be right now if that had happened.
It's interesting that they're 4-0 on the road and 2-2 at home.
Yeah, man, but Iowa State is really tough too. Man. Anyway, all right. Any final thoughts? Anything else you want to get out?
For me, if we're going to stick to it a little bit, my Big 12 title, I think, is just going to come down to Houston, Iowa State, and Arizona. I think Arizona's legit too, actually. Yep, and they're right there. KenPom and the metrics love Arizona too, both offense and defense. Top 25.
Just I would prefer Houston or Arizona. That's my only thought there.
I think Arizona's a live contender for the title. I do. I know a lot of the attention's on Houston and Iowa State. I think Arizona's kind of lurking and not many people talking about them yet.
Yeah. Okay. Cole has no Big 12 title thoughts, apparently.
Well, I mean, I was looking at Houston's schedule. They get to host Iowa State in late February, and that'll be big for their chances. They don't have to go to Ames. So, if they win against Iowa State, and Houston doesn't have a Big 12 loss, Iowa State's got one, right?
Yes.
They do.
So then going there,
Arizona's got one.
Iowa State lost to West Virginia, Cole. Can't even imagine.
Arizona's got one, and Arizona does not have to go to Houston, and they do get them at home.
Yeah.
I mean, Cole, can you imagine losing to West Virginia?
I can't. I mean, I can't imagine losing to West Virginia on your home court. I mean, KU and Iowa State did that, but yeah. So yeah.
Houston's tough road games left. If you want to count West Virginia, sure. Arizona, Tech, Baylor.
I didn't realize Houston plays KU home and home this year, so they get Houston at KU at home late in the season as well. So
And followed by at Baylor. That's a tough little 2-game stretch there.
yeah, they do. I mean, they have some tough games, but yeah, it's probably going to come down to Houston, Arizona, and Iowa State for sure. Arizona 6-5 in the non-con and looked like a disaster, and now they've really flipped the switch once league play started.
Well, we're having a little side convo with Nick now. Man, Kansas fans are down pretty bad right now. I would trade you, Kansas fans. I would trade your problems for case problems. But as I said, we're coming back up. All right, everyone's been humbled. We're going to build ourselves back up the right way. It's okay. We can do this, everybody. One day at a time.
Don't play Hunter Dickinson 45 minutes.
One step at a time. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. Okay, well, thanks to Holiday Distillery. Thanks to all of our great sponsors, Alenko, Home Field Apparel. And appreciate Nick for reminding me to do the reads. Keeping everything running smoothly, man. Does a great job behind the scenes. So for Nick, for Cole, for Derek, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for listening to another edition of 3 Ma. We will talk to you very soon.